Howdy there, Bill here again. I got rid of the Mr. Natural look, huh? What do you think? I've long been fascinated with just exactly how it is that in the cycles of nature that we can actually get nutrients around the planet and where the plants actually find the food that they use. Because in our own gardens, typically, we're always running around tossing fertilizer, coffee grounds, or compost or something around our plants to keep everything growing, you know, and so it has always made me wonder, well, we don't see this happening in nature, so how does it happen? In my last video, I know I discussed the idea that the nitrogen in redwood forests and Douglas fir forests here on the west coast actually comes from the ocean via the salmon, and the bears carry it into the woods and so on. And that is pretty interesting stuff. I recently was watching a program about how some people theorized the decline and fall of Easter Island was mostly because they had killed all the shorebirds. Easter Island is a very, very remote location, and really the only way that nutrients, new nutrients, could come onto the island was to come from the ocean, and it was the seabirds that were bringing this in as they were nesting on the islands and roosting on the islands and so on, and all that bird manure all over Easter Island was actually what was keeping the forest growing and a whole lot of the island's fertility. Hard times came. Apparently the islanders ate most of the birds that were visiting the island, and in the process the entire island went into environmental decline and collapse because the bird manure was missing. It's just a theory, all right, but it makes a lot of sense. Actually, it much sense as anything. Definitely it's more logical than space aliens did it. I've often thought about the place that a bird has in the environment. For quite a while now I've wondered just where it is that epiphytic plants, that is the ones that grow on tree limbs, get a lot of their nutrients from. I mean, things like epiphytic orchids or cacti that are epiphytes, some of the ferns that grow on tree limbs and such. You see this a lot if you're in rainforest climates. You get all this vegetation up on the top of the canopy, yet it's not connected to the forest floor at all, and so none of the usual cycles of the earth and so on that we're used to actually occur up there. Now, of course, there is the litter from the tree leaves that accumulate on the limbs, and there's dead mosses, you know, and oh, you got the bodies of insects, I suppose, that die up there and so on. You also, though, get an awful lot of birds in tree canopies. And I've often thought that orchids in nature probably subsist mostly on bird poo that's deposited on the limbs of the trees. Now, thinking about this over the years, I had positioned perches here or there around my yard in strategic locations where I might be able to handle some bird dropping, and have been surprised to find just how much free manure the little birdies in the neighborhood will bring into your yard. And now I'm beginning to realize that actually it is very significant. Right here behind me is my macadamia nut tree. It's beginning to bud up again for the year. We get 2 crops a year off this thing. Wonderful plants, macadamia. I also, though, have last crop falling. It's dropping on the ground under the tree. And to make my life easier, I went under the tree about 2 weeks ago, and I spread big sheets of cardboard, and I put down an old tarp, laid it underneath there so that the nuts, as they fell out of the tree, would drop on top of the cardboard and the tarp, so making it much easier for me to just rake them up, you know, put them out to dry. Well, unintended consequences as I was looking for my nuts. That is, as I went underneath to harvest the fruit from the tree that had fallen, I was looking at little tiny white spots all over the place. And I said, oh my God, it's bird poop. Yeah, I mean, in 2 weeks' time, I have an extraordinary amount of droppings from the little birds just under the one single tree in my yard. Let me show you. I got these sheets of cardboard here. You know, there's the tree trunk right back there. And over here we got macadamia nuts laying here and there all over the place on top of the cardboard. But if we look closer, we see all these little teeny white spots here. All of this white stuff, every bit of it. This is bird poop. I mean, there's a lot of it under here. It's incredible. There's so much bird poop, I don't really want to crawl around underneath here in my shorts, because I think I'll get covered with it. Here you can see how it's showing up on the sheets of cardboard back here.
all those little white spots and the blotches. Some of them are, you know, and some are little turds. But you can make it out here. It's all the bright white spots. This is all bird manure. This is 2 weeks worth of little birdie poop. Now, if you figure out that this kind of behavior goes on day after day after day, year round, that's a lot of poo. Okay, and it's actually possible that I claim that I have not fed this macadamia nut tree in 15 years. That is true, although it has an extraordinary mulch underneath here, all sorts of litter, you know, and that feeds it, I'm sure. But I'm beginning to realize that I got some potent fertilizer actually falling out of the tree from all the little birds that come to my yard feeding this plant. Okay, bird poop, it's time for your close-up. Check that out. All right, we're talking little drifts of the stuff. That's a lot of poo.
So this mac nut tree is not the only tree in my yard that makes a good bird perch. Actually, almost everything in this landscape. Apples, pears, you name it, citrus. Almost everything out here in the landscape that makes a perch for a bird has these deposits underneath it. I really noticed them as well as I have in this case, because usually all the stuff falls beneath the mulch, falls between the leaves, and just sort of gets lost out there, and I don't really see it. It wasn't until I put this flat surface back here that was clean as a kitchen floor originally, and waited a couple weeks, that I could really take an inventory. And, you know, if I was a real scientist, I'd go under there with a calculator and I'd add up how much bird poo was there, what the volume of each turd was, and how much nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium I'm actually getting from this. But, you know, as a general sense, as a gardener, I'm looking at it and going, man, if that's what falls under that tree every 2 weeks, year round, I don't need to worry about fertilizer. So as we come towards this idea of permaculture gardens, actually another one of the cycles of nature that can be taken into a garden is allowing places for the birds to roost. Because if the birds roost, they're going to drop turds, and the turds are going to fertilize your garden. And sparrow poop is every bit as potent as turkey or duck or chicken manure is. This is strong fertilizer. That's good stuff. It doesn't take a lot of it. So the more perching places, the more tree limbs, the more little wires and different things that you have going through the garden where the birds can set down, the more of this you're going to accumulate. Okay, and that's free fertilizer. It comes straight from nature. Hey, what more can I say on this subject? It's for real. It's happening, and it actually kind of validates the idea about Easter Island too. Because once I see how much, I mean, I don't have massive amounts of birds coming in from, 2,000 miles worth of ocean to a small island here to make nests and rookeries and so on. I just have my local finches and my blue jays, and sparrows and the towhees and all that stuff that you see in most of our yards. I have a good population. We feed them, and so I kind of nice to the little birds, even though they drive me crazy. So we do have a good population, but it doesn't even take bird seed to gather birds into the yard. Just perches. Water is a simple one, especially here in California with our current drought. You put out a saucer full of water in the backyard, you're going to get birds. Trust me, they're going to come for it. They'll take a bath, they'll drink it. So that's all I got to say about it. So this video was all about ambient fertilizer, the stuff that just kind of shows up in the garden that you may not have even noticed was there. You have it too.